Well, good evening. Happy Sabbath, everyone. It's not Sabbath here yet, but will be. And we're going to continue. You guys are going to be helping me with my book on God's celestial clock. But before we do, let's have a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are so thankful for the Sabbath and the hours that we will be able to spend together studying, especially tomorrow. But we ask for your presence here now as I read about the sky that you have created and the purpose of it. And as we look at the story of Noah, we ask, Lord, for your Holy Spirit to give us wisdom and understanding. I pray that you can bless each person who watches these videos and those that participate, and that we can be drawn closer to you. We ask for your angels to watch over us and to guide, and that your Holy Spirit can guide and direct us this Sabbath, that we can know you better. So be with us now, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, good evening. And so this book, working on this, has been, it's quite an adventure for me. I continue to learn lots of things. I hope that that you guys are learning as we go through this. So we had gone through the story of the flood with Noah up to the covenant, to the rainbow, so the story of the rainbow. And I did edit some of the stuff in there, but I'm not going to read over that again. What we're going to look at is the sky itself in the year 2391 to 2390 BC, the year of the flood. Now, I have this little section. I don't know if it's good or not, but it's kind of like an invitation. It says the stars of night. It's going to be a poem I wrote called The Stars of Night. Before we turn to the heavens themselves, I must pause and offer the reader something more human than an ephemeris. For the work ahead is not merely technical. It is an act of lifting the eyes. Many walk through life with their gaze fixed upon the ground, unable to rise above the fog or the city lights, unable to imagine that the sky might speak. I have known this posture in others, and I've known it in myself. And so, before we look at the sky Noah saw, allow me to offer a small invitation, a hand extended into the night. So this poem, which I wrote a long time ago, but it's called The Stars of Night. Simply take my hand and see the stars of night with me. For what? Can one imagined thought tell the tale the heart has wrought? Or what? Can eyes that have never met recall what they can't forget? Shall I hide you in a bower with falling stars a shower? Yet downcast is your gaze as we traverse so dark a maze. For who am I to cast a gloom upon thy spare and hallowed tomb? Lift up your eyes to the sky and see. Awake from your nocturnal reverie, for every point and every prick is light and love and quick. It is with this spirit, not of compulsion, but of invitation, that we now lift our eyes with Noah and behold the sky he saw. For whatever else may be said of the ancient world, this much is certain. The heavens that governed his months are the same heavens that govern ours, and they bear witness still. Now that we can see the structure of the spans and dates, we simply, in quotation marks, need to align these dates to the calendar used by Noah. Whatever this calendar was, it had to correspond to the reality of the sky he beheld and wondered at for 600 years. That stable and ever-present architecture above the world, immovable and steady, by which he measured the days and months under which the earth was transformed. And we cannot force these dates into a preconceived ideal or an assumed calendar. The dates Moses gives us are precise. The second month, the 17th day, the 10th month, the first day. And if these are to mean anything, they must correspond to real lunar months in real time in the years 2391 to 2390 BC. How does this help us? Before we can reconstruct the chronology of the flood, we have to face a simple but stubborn fact. The moon does not behave the way most people imagine. Many assume that every month is the same length, that the moon moves with mechanical regularity, that the full moon appears on a predictable schedule. But the sky refuses such simplicity. The moon speeds and slows. Its orbit stretches and contracts. Its fullness drifts across the calendar like a wandering note in a piece of music. Now, this irregularity, the moon's anomaly, is what makes the reconstruction difficult. But it is also what makes it possible. An irregular pattern cannot be forced. It cannot be faked. It cannot be made to fit a false chronology. It becomes a lock that only the correct key can open. When we first attempted this work in December of 2016, we tried to fit the flood narrative into the familiar 360-day, 30-day model, assuming the first month began in the spring. It would not hold. The spans fit clumsily. They did not align with the dates given. No calendar worked. So we looked to the sky. Now, I want to just direct you here now because I want to put some diagrams in this book, and I'm working on trying how to create diagrams that are going to be helpful and consistent. So if we look here at this diagram, this is the 360-day year. Now, one of the things that we assume, so if we start on the 17th day of the second month, when the rains began, and we believe that there's a 360-day year, then the 17th day of the second month is going to be 360 days later, right? So we have a 360-day year that would work. Now, but it's true, no matter what kind of calendar you use, if you start with a 365-day calendar and you start on the 17th day of the second month, 365 days would also end on the 17th day of the second month, correct? Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't tell you anything about the length of the year. Like, we know that they leave the ark on the 27th day of the second month. So that would be 10 days after 360 days. So that'd be 370 days that they would have been from when it started raining, if there was a 360-day year, to them coming out of the ark. Does that make sense to people? Does this diagram make sense at the top? So the line diagram, which we'll look at the blocks in a minute. But so no matter what length of year I have, going from the 17th day of the second month to the 27th day of the second month and being 370 days, it could be 395 days if you had a 385-day year, right? So there's kind of an illusion that people have when they look at the 360-day year and don't think too deeply, right? Now, where most people get the 360-day year, remember there's the 17th day of the second month and then the 17th day of the seventh month. And people believe that that's the 150 days. But if you count from the 17th day of the second month as the first day of rain, and the 17th day of the seventh month that the whatever they think happens on that day, I think some people think the rain stops that day, where the waters prevailed, it would actually be 151 days if you had a 30-day month, right? Because you would count it inclusively. There's nothing that says that that's the period of 150 days. So in this calendar, so this would be if you had a 360-day calendar. So you're going to have, the first month's going to be 30 days, and then the door of the ark's going to close on the 10th day of the second month, so that would be 40 days. And then that week, the animals come in as the last week of 40 days. So that works out okay, because that's going to be the same on mine. And then you have a week, and then the rains begin. So you have 40 days of rain, and it begins 150 days of rain. And so now in this chart, I'm technically starting the day after with the 150 days and the 40 days. But you can see I put the 40 days on top of the 150 days there as a block. And then the first day of the, let's go down here. How come this doesn't? Okay. So this should be the first day of the 10th month. I didn't actually end up editing the, oh no, that should be the 7th month, 17th day. I didn't put all these here in this. So the 7th month, the 17th day. This is going to be the 10th day of the 2nd month. You can see that down there at the bottom. There's the first day of the 10th month. Okay, so that's going to be where? First day of the 10th month. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's going to be here. Yeah, this one I hadn't, so the 17th day. Oh, I see. I don't really need those down there. I got them up here. I'm just going to get rid of these. Okay. I have them up at top. That's what I did with this one. Okay, so, and then you have from the, so where you're going to have a problem here. Oh, I see where the problem lies. So you're going to have the first day of the 10th month. So this is the 17th day of the 7th month, right? But the waters, the tops of the trees or the tops of the mountains are going to be seen on the, so I didn't do this right. So I got 1, so that's the 2nd, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you're going to have the 40 days from the 10th day. Okay, so I'm trying to figure this out. So we got, so 40 plus 21, that's 61. Yeah. So it doesn't really, it's not really fitting in here. So you got 30 days, 40 days, and then you got these weeks here. So these weeks would end, because this is going to be the first day of the 10th month. I got to put that in here. So I should have finished this one. I finished the other chart, but this one I didn't. Okay, so this is going to be the 10th month. So 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. So from the first day of the 10th month, there's 40 days plus 22 days. And that would bring us to the end of, so it would bring us here to the end of the 11th month, or so 10th, to the end of the 11th month. So that's where these weeks would line up. I have to maybe make these a bit smaller to fit in there. But then you got the 17th day of the 12th month. So they don't go up to the 17th day of the 12th month. They're going to go up to like, so the 17th day of the 12th month, if we count from the 17th day of the 2nd month, that would be 300 days, right? Because that's going to be 10 months. So you take the 2nd month, you go to the 12th month. And then there's going to be 13 days before the first day of the 1st month, right? Because if you're on the 17th day of the 12th month, you still got 13 days to get to the end of the year. And that's when the land is going to be dry, right? So this doesn't get the 300 days to line up. The other thing that doesn't happen is the weeks, the 2 weeks here and these 3 weeks here don't line up. So when we tried to do the 360-day calendar for the flood, we found it didn't work. And initially, I thought it would, right? I was thinking back then, that there was this 360-day year with 30-day months, and that the flood changed the calendar, right? Back in 2016, I was still in that sort of frame of mind, right? But that didn't work, right? It just, you couldn't get the flood to fit. And there's other problems too. Now, what we ended up doing is this, which we're going to look at. So this is the correct flood calendar. So we will look at that. But for now, this is the point that I'm making here. So if people have questions, feel free to ask questions. So when this was in December of 2016, so it was when I lived in Warburg, and we had a Friday night study, and we did this for a couple of months actually, going through trying to fit the flood calendar, and we even tried different years because originally I didn't have 2391 to 2390. I wasn't really certain about which year it was even at that point. I hadn't worked out the earlier chronology. I'd worked out the chronology of the kings and all the way back to Abraham, but I hadn't really decided on the flood exactly. So that actually part of what what we came to understand from the study of the flood is it actually helped us to establish 2391 to 2390. But so anyway, we will go through this chart. This one I'm going to, and what I'm needing help from is we look at this chart. Which looks better to you as far as interpreting the blocks, the colored blocks at the bottom, or the line charts that we do all the time? Which is easier to see and understand?
I would actually prefer the lines.
You like the lines?
I
Okay.
do.
Okay. And Kelly likes the lines as well. Okay. Because that's what I'm trying to figure out. Maybe I could use a combination of them. But see, we're used to the lines, right? So I'm not sure if that's really a fair question on how somebody else looking at these lines would see it. But anyway, that's one of the things I'll have to decide later on, exactly how to illustrate it. I do want to have a consistent way of illustrating things so that, it's not a bunch of different types of diagrams. I like consistency. And then the reader becomes familiar with whatever method I use for representing spans of time. Even if I use two different systems, that's still fine. But at least, there's a consistency of imagery that's used. Okay, I've just got to go back to the document here. Right, so the spans fit clumsily when we looked at the 360-day one. So they did not align with the dates given. No calendar worked, so we looked to the sky. The breakthrough came only when we abandoned the calendrical assumptions. We began to question everything. The numbering of the months, how were they observed? Whether the new moon or the full moon served as the marker, whether the months were simply observed or also calculated. At this point, we must pause and ask a question that is as old as the narrative itself. Are these dates and spans the embroidery of myth, or do they belong to the fabric of the world? I've told you that they are real, that they rest upon the same heavens that govern our own days. But such an assurance, however earnestly given, cannot suffice. The reader must see this for himself. Truth, if it is to anchor the soul, must be apprehended, not merely received. I cannot clear every branch from the path that lies ahead. The terrain is ancient and the undergrowth thick with unfamiliar terms and forgotten ways of reckoning time. Yet I can open enough of the way that the attentive reader may discern the trail, and once having seen it, may walk with confidence. For the path is there. It has always been there, though it winds through regions seldom visited by the modern mind. And so we begin, not with abstractions, not with later refinement of rabbinic calculation, nor with the assumptions that have so often obscured the plain testimony of the text. We begin where Noah began, with the sky. Whatever else may be said of the antediluvian world, this much is certain. Noah lived beneath the same moon that governs our months, the same wandering light whose fullness and fading mark the rhythm of time. If his year commenced on the first day of the first month, then that day must correspond to a real moment in the heavens, a moment that can be known. Grace Amadon once suggested that the Passover always followed the day of the full moon, and we came to see that this might not be an anomaly of later practice, but an echo of something earlier. I gotta use my British spelling. A remnant of a calendar that measured the month not by the first sliver of light, but by the moment of fullness. To use the full moon as our guide, however, we had to determine which full moons Noah would have seen and when they occurred. Here the modern reader possesses an advantage Noah did not, the ephemeris. With it, we may look back across the millennia and behold the heavens as they appeared in the years 2391 and 2390 before Christ. We may watch the full moons rise and set. We may observe the irregular pulse of the lunar cycle. We may see the very sequence of months that framed the flood. And having seen these things, we may test whether the dates Moses records aligns with the sky Noah observed. Being open to this possibility required a different kind of precision. We could now look at the raw data of the years before and after 2390 BC and ask whether any of them aligned naturally with the lunar months at all. We had no idea where this path would lead. We only knew that the text was giving us exact spans and dates, and that our task was to align them faithfully. The diagrams that follow will show one example, a single month, a single full moon, a single alignment, so the reader can see the process unfold. We cannot bring the reader through every calculation we performed, but we can show enough to reveal the method, enough to demonstrate the logic, enough that anyone who wishes may verify the results for themselves. Now, I still have to do some work in the book as far as showing the sky, because I'm going to show from stellarium a picture. You can see the horizon. You can see when the sun is rising and the moon. So the sun sets and the moon rises. So the idea of the full moon, because we have the astronomical full moon, right? And, that happens at a precise time. They usually put it as universal time when the full moon occurs. Sometimes you can get it in local time. When is the full moon in your local time? But that is when the Earth is directly between the sun and the moon, right? That's when we get a full moon. But to the Jews and to the ancients, they observed the full moon rising after the sun set, and that would mark the day of the full moon. So it wasn't, and the thing is, the full moon is easier to discern than a crescent moon. I'm going to deal with that in the text, but what would be the problem with looking for the first visible crescent to start the month? What's the weakness of that system? If anybody's ever tried to see the start of the month with the visible crescent, and the sun is setting, you look for the first visible crescent after, the moon has disappeared for a couple of days. What's the problem historically? What's the problem if you try to do it now? Does anybody know? Okay, it changes, but a crescent is a very thin little sliver, right? If you have humidity, it might not be seen when it would be seen if it was clear, dry air. Obviously, clouds will obscure it much more readily than a rising full moon, right? So, and when we go into the calendar section, we're going to learn that the Romans, they marked the middle of the month also with the full moon. And one of the arguments for Jesus' crucifixion on a Friday in 31 AD is where the full moon lies. If you use the visible crescent, Jesus could have been crucified, like the Passover would be one day earlier. But because of the full moon, it can't be on Thursday. It has to be on Friday. Grace Amadon deals with that. So, which I mentioned there, Grace Amadon in that previous paragraph. But anyway, it's going to be something that I have to be able to illustrate that people can see it quite clearly, because most of us never really think about, the rising of the full moon, or, even looking at the first visible crescent. Most of us have never tried to figure that out, but it is difficult, and sometimes you won't see it. And it's going to talk about that in the document. So we return to the questions that began the entire investigation. What kind of month produces the spans Moses records? What kind of year allows for 150-day symmetry to stand? And what lunar marker would Noah have used before the Exodus calendar existed? And what happens when we let the sky, not our assumptions, guide the structure? These were the questions that opened the door. What follows is not merely a chronology, but the demonstration of how that door was unlocked. We have spoken of the moon's anomaly before, but we must now linger with it long enough to understand what it means in practical terms. The moon does not circle the Earth in a perfect ring, nor does it move with the mechanical regularity that modern minds often assume. At times it draws near to us, perigee, and at times it withdraws, apogee. These distances have nothing to do with its phases. A full moon may rise when the moon is closest to the Earth. swelling into what we now call a supermoon, or it may shine when the moon is farthest away, diminished in apparent size. During an annular eclipse, when the moon stands at apogee, its smaller disk cannot fully cover the sun, and the ring of fire encircles the shadow. The heavens themselves bear witness to this irregularity. So when we have an annular solar eclipse, and I should probably say an annular solar eclipse, just so people know what I'm talking about. Okay. The moon is in apogee, it's farthest away, and so it's a bit smaller in the sky, and so it doesn't cover the sun perfectly. So annular eclipses are interesting. They're not as spectacular as a total solar eclipse. The average length of the lunar month is often given with great precision, 29.530587 days. That is 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and a few seconds besides. Yet this number is only an average, a mathematical convenience. The moon's path is elliptical, and like a runner who quickens his pace, annular means a ring. So when you get a ring around the solar eclipse, instead of covering it completely, the moon is smaller. Kelly just asked the question, what's annular? Annular means ring, so that you get a ring around it. When I teach guitar, you pollex, indexus, medius, and annularis. That's your ring finger. Anyway, so the moon's path is elliptical, and like a runner who quickens his pace on the downward slope and slows upon the rise, the moon hastens when it is near the earth and lingers when it is far. Thus, each month is not the same as the last. One may be as short as 29 days, 6 hours, and some minutes. Another may stretch nearly 14 hours longer. This difference, though slight to the modern eye, in part determines whether a month is reckoned as 29 or 30 days. So it's not the total thing, because it has to do with, when it rises. But anyway, this may seem a great deal to take in, but in practical terms, the matter is simple. A month is either 29 or 30 days long, and there are more of the latter than the former. So that is, you're going to have more 30-day months than 29-day months. The difficulty lies not in the principle, but in the discernment. To us, accustomed to printed calendars and fixed tables, the task of determining which months are long and which are short appears daunting. Yet Noah would have known. Okay, so Kelly's asking a question, or you commenting about annular eclipses. Yeah, they're not, well, you have generally about 3 solar eclipses per year, though they're not all observable by, every place on Earth, right? I would say the annular eclipse probably happens 1 in 4. Solar eclipses are annular eclipses, right? So, yeah, something like that. Okay, it says the equals not every year. Annular frequency, these events happen roughly every 1 or 2 years. So I don't understand. What do you mean the equals not? Kelly, can you tell me what you mean by that?
I guess my signal's not too good here, but I'll try. So I guess it's, when I hear the word annular, I think of annual, like each year, one year. So annular is not every year.
No,
Yeah,
that
the annular
doesn't refer
eclipse,
to
and
the
that's
year.
kind of what I was trying to clarify. That's all.
Okay, I see. Now I understand your question. Yeah, annular just refers to the ring, right? Nothing to do with annual, even though annual is based on the same word. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe that's something I need to clarify. Just a bit more explanation about what an annular eclipse is. Okay. So to us accustomed to printed calendars and fixed tables, the task of determining which months are long and which are short appear daunting. Yet Noah would have known. He lived beneath the sky, not beneath fluorescent lights, and he watched the moon rise and set, wax and wane, drift and return. The heavens were his clock, his calendar, his teacher. Here the difficulty becomes more apparent. It is not enough to know that the moon's path is irregular. We must also discern where that irregularity falls in relation to sunset, for it is at sunset that the ancient month begins. A month may be 29 or 30 days in length, but the determination is not arbitrary. It depends upon the moon's position in its wandering orbit, upon whether the first visible crescent can be seen after the sun has dipped below the horizon, or whether the full moon stands in its appointed place at the close of the 13th day, marking the threshold of the 14th. These are simple principles in themselves, yet their application requires a careful eye. When we first attempted the work in 2016, we had no elegant method. It was trial and error, a slow and patient testing of each month against the sky. I used Skyview Cafe as an ephemeris, watching the heavens of 2391 and 2390 BC unfold night by night, asking whether the pattern of the moon could bear the weight of the spans Moses records. It was laborious, but it taught us something essential. The spans and dates in the text are fixed. The pattern in the sky is fixed. And at some point, the resonance between the two becomes unmistakable. One cannot force the heavens to comply with a false chronology. The sky will not bend. It will either receive the structure of the text or reject it. Numbers, however precise, can feel abstract. The reader needs something more concrete, a way to see the alignment rather than merely hear of it. For this reason, I will provide a few diagrams for those who wish to follow the process more closely. But even without them, the principle is simple enough. Two immovable patterns, one in the text and one in the heavens, must either harmonize or fall apart. Keep getting all this in American spelling. Okay. When they harmonize, the lock turns. Okay. So before we can speak of months and spans, we must learn to stand where Noah stood. So I'm kind of repeating myself. Some of this stuff I wrote, and then I wrote again, and then I sort of have not edited them together yet, but so I kind of be a bit redundant here. Before we can speak of months and spans, we must learn to stand where Noah stood beneath the open sky. And for most modern readers, the moon is little more than a familiar ornament glimpsed through city lights and caught between errands. And few know how to read it. Fewer still know it moves through its phases, or how it moves through its phases. Can you tell whether the moon is waxing or waning? Can you tell if it's waxing, returning to fullness, or waning, moving away from it? We might not give it a thought, for our lives do not depend upon this knowledge. Yet the ancients lived by it. Understanding the timing of the moon, reading its face was essential. Now here I'll probably have some pictures of the waxing and waning moon as well, just to help illustrate it for people who are a bit more visual. Their festivals, their harvests, their reckonings of time are all bound to its wandering path. To understand Noah's calendar, we must recover this older way of seeing. The first principle is simple. The day begins at sunset, and this alone changes everything. The astronomical full moon, the precise moment when the moon stands opposite the sun, may occur at any hour, but the day of the full moon, in ancient reckoning, begins only when the sun has set and the moon rises afterward in the east. This is the full moon as Noah would have known it, not a mathematical instant, but a visible event. So the day before the full moon will rise while the sun is still in the sky. So that's not the day of the full moon. So if the sun hasn't set and you see a full moon, you know it's not a full moon yet, right? It's the next day, maybe, depends how high it was in the sky, but the next day, if the sun sets and then the moon rises, that's the day of the full moon. So that would be the 14th day of the month, beginning at sunset. So it'd be on the evening of the 13th that you need to see the full moon rising after the sun is set. Okay. The second principle is equally simple. The sun chases the moon, not the other way around. At conjunction, the new moon, the sun, overtakes the moon, passing it invisibly. The moon lags behind. When the first visible crescent appears after sunset. Now, I got to word this different because in some ways, the sun chases the moon and overtakes it. The moon never overtakes the sun, I guess is maybe what I should say. Yeah, so you got here, Kelly put, I can only tell gibbous or waxing in this app. So the gibbous moon, so yeah, that's after it's full. Let me see, or that's when it's waning, right? So after it's full is the gibbous moon. Yeah, so I don't know what this means. Waxing gibbous. So the gibbous is like the full. So waxing gibbous means it's going to be, right now it's going to be full, like it's not full. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, there's a lot of technical language about the moon too that I could add. I don't know how much I want to add all of the technical language. Just the waxing and waning, I think, is simple enough. So it's waxing gibbous. The gibbous moon is the full moon. Okay, so, but the idea is that the sun moves faster in the sky than the moon moves. So the sun keeps overtaking the moon, passing it, right? Every month. So the moon is always kind of chasing the sun. It's trying to catch up. It's the little brother who's got short little legs and can't keep up with his older brother. So the second principle is equally simple. The sun chases the moon, not the other way around. At conjunction, the new moon, the sun overtakes the moon, passing it invisibly. So that's what we call the new moon, the astronomical new moon, the conjunction. The moon then lags behind. When the first visible crescent appears after sunset, the month begins. The next night, the crescent lingers longer in the western sky. It sets later each evening, standing higher than it did the night before. It waxes, night by night, until about 15 days later, it rises just after the sun has set. As the sun passes, 15, it's probably more like 14. I should say 14. There we go. As the days pass, the moon grows bolder. On the evening before the full moon, it may be seen rising in the east, even before the sun is fully set in the west. But only when the sun is dipped below the horizon and the moon rises afterward do we reach the day of the full moon, the ancient marker of the middle of the month. And this is the sky Noah knew. This is the sky Moses assumed. This is the sky we must recover. Only then can we understand how the months of 2391 to 2390 BC unfold. Only then can we see why the 8th month becomes an embolism, why the pattern of in that year is 30, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 30, 29, 30. So there's going to be two months in that 15 span where there's 2 months in a row that are 30 days each. And they have to be in the right spot, as we will see. So if you have the 30 days in a different spot, it wouldn't fit the spans and dates. Before we turn to the diagrams, we must stand beneath the heavens and learn to watch the moon as Noah watched it, setting later, rising later, waxing, waning, drifting, returning, the quiet pulse of time. Okay, now clarifying the two markers. Kelly mentions Cat Stevens on being followed by a moon shadow, I think. At this point, we must pause and address a question that has shaped centuries of debate. How did the ancients determine the beginning and the middle of the month? Two methods appear in the historical record. The first, familiar to readers of the Exodus calendar, begins the month with the first visible crescent, the slender arc that appears in the western sky after sunset, climbing higher each evening. This method is well attested in later Jewish practice, where the sighting of the crescent determined the new month. But an older pattern also appears that rests upon the crescent, not upon the crescent, but upon the full moon. In this reckoning, the middle of the month is marked not by the astronomical instant of opposition, but of the evening when the sun has set and the moon rises afterward in the east. This visible event, the full moon entering the night, begins the 14th day, and the 15th always follows the day of the full moon. So the 15th is going to be the day after the full moon, right? Several ancient sources preserve this memory, suggesting that the full moon, not the crescent, once governed the structure of the month. For Noah, who lived long before the refinement of later calculation, The sky itself would have been the guide. The crescent begins the month. The full moon marks its middle. And because the day begins at sunset, the full moon day begins only when the sun is dipped below the horizon and the moon rises in its place. This is the rhythm we must recover if we are to understand the months of 2391 to 2390 BC. As we laid out the months, now just a question. So I tend to repeat myself in these paragraphs. Now, part of the reason I'm doing that is I'm assuming that the reader may not just sit and read the book solid through, that they're going to pick up at a different spot at different times, because it's going to be a slow read, especially when we get to these technical sections. So it brings them back into what we're talking about. So like lots of times I mention the year repeatedly. So I'm not trying to dumb it down for the reader, but I am trying to make it so that the reader can follow it. And I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's why I have quite a bit of repetition. And some of it is just editing because of how I wrote it, but okay. So the 7-day rhythm emerges. Okay, as we laid out the months, another pattern emerged. One so simple and yet so easily overlooked. Oh, okay. One so simple and yet so easily overlooked that it startled us when we first saw it. The 7-day periods in the flood narrative fall into place with a precision that cannot be forced. They begin where they must begin. They end where they must end. The weekly rhythm that governed the creation week appears again in the structure of the flood, not as symbolism, but as chronology. Whatever else may be said of the ancient world, this much is certain. The 7-day cycle was already fixed, already known, already woven into the fabric of time. The sky itself bears witness to it in the sense that it's going to show up here in the story of the flood. These weeks do not float. They are bound to dates. That is the weeks in the story of Noah. For the 2 7-day periods at the beginning and the 4 weeks of the birds at the end to align, 2 conditions must be met. The first day of the second month must fall on a Thursday, and the first day of the 10th month must fall on a Tuesday. If either fails, the pattern collapses. The weeks no longer match. The dates no longer hold. This means the months between them cannot be guessed or adjusted at all. They must have the exact length the sky gives them. Any other arrangement breaks the structure. So Kelly asks why. Well, we're going to see that. So since the weeks are fixed, they're not dependent on the months, right? In order for those dates in which these things occur, because you're going to count 40 days from the first day of the 10th month, and then they're going to let the raven release the raven. If that first day of the 10th month was on a different date, then the raven wouldn't be released on the first day of the week. It would be released on some other day, right? And the same with when they close the door of the ark on the 10th day of the 7th month. That month has to line up so that is a Sabbath that they close the door, right? So that those weeks have to line up with these months. Okay, so yeah, and those are things, I'm trying to make them clear in the book, and that's the one thing that I worry about, is that I might lose people and they have a question and they don't really see the answer right away. So I'm going to try to use lots of diagrams that show this. The first day always being of the week, the first day. So when they talk about the 7 days, what most people assume is the 7 days are just a period of 7 days. But what we found when we put together the chronology of the flood is that those weeks were actually the creation week. That is, they line up with the creation week cycle. And that was unexpected, right? It wasn't a requirement. The 7 days could have been any other ones. But the fact that they line up with this calendar was very, very interesting. Okay. So charting the heavens. We must now approach the point that I dread. Dear reader, I do not want to lose you. This is technical, but I seek to make it as painless as possible. We're going to look at the sky from mid-September 2391 BC, to the end of November in 2390 BC. And we have the dates and spans and the patterns of the months with which to align them, to aid us in visualizing and reconstructing the sky that Noah beheld during the year of the flood. We have several charts to examine. The first is Formulab's astronomical new moon and full moon chart. And this is paired with our chart from the perspective of Ararat. And we note the Julian date for the sighting of the first visible crescent for each month. And then we have the date and the day of the full moon, which marks the start of the 14th day at sunset. So determining the month, full moon, or crescent moon. It should be or, not of. Before we proceed with the charts themselves, we must pause to consider the difficulty that has troubled the students of sacred time from the earliest ages. It is commonly assumed and repeated with great confidence that the ancients possessed a single uniform method for determining the beginning of the month. Yet history bears witness to no such uniformity. The Hebrews, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the desert tribes of Arabia each employed their own customs, and even within these cultures, the method shifted over time, shaped by climate, geography, political pressure, and the slow evolution of religious thought. God did not prescribe a universal rule for marking the month. He left men to observe the heavens and discern the patterns for themselves. So the Bible doesn't tell us to look for the first visible crescent. Doesn't say anything about it. Now, there are ways that we know that they did use the first visible crescent in the time of the Exodus. There's ways that we can figure that out. And it never mentions a 13th month, but we know that it has to be because the first month always has to follow the spring equinox. So anyway, these are things that when I go through the calendars, I'm going to go through that in more detail. So this section here is before I actually get into all the different calendars, the Egyptian, the Babylonian, the Greek calendar, the Roman calendars, and the Islamic calendar, right? All of those different calendars, Mayan calendar, and so forth. Okay, so the first visible crescent, so beloved of later Jewish practice, is not a simple or unambiguous marker. Its appearance depends upon the clarity of the western horizon, the dryness of the air, the altitude of the observer, the moon's own distance from the earth. A thin crescent may be seen one evening in the highlands and not until the next in the valleys below. Clouds, dust, or the faintest haze delay its sighting by a full day. And even in the age of the Sanhedrin, disputes arose between witnesses, and the rabbis were compelled to interrogate shepherds and travelers to determine whether the crescent had truly been seen. The Babylonians, though masters of astronomical calculation, often relied upon predicted visibility rather than actual sighting, and the later rabbinic calendar abandoned observation altogether, adopting a fixed arithmetic cycle, in part to distinguish themselves from both Christians and Karaites. So the modern rabbinic calendar was developed first in the 5th century, and then wasn't really adopted till the 13th century. So the modern rabbinic calendar is very modern compared to the biblical calendar. Such is the history of the crescent. Vulnerable, yes, but never uniform and never without ambiguity. In the year of the flood, this ambiguity would have been magnified. The world was already entering a season of unprecedented atmospheric disturbance. The moisture rising from the deep, the gathering vapors, the thickening air would have rendered the first crescent exceedingly difficult to discern. Yet the full moon, rising in splendor at the very moment of sunset, would have remained unmistakable. It is the most public of all lunar phases, visible from every valley and every mountain ridge, and requiring no calculation, no witness, and no tribunal. It divides the month with perfect symmetry, marking the 14th day with a certainty that no clouded horizon can obscure. For this reason, many ancient peoples anchored their months not to the elusive crescent, but to the full moon itself. The Romans, whose calendar still echoes through our language, fixed the Ides, the full moon, as the central pillar of the month. It is not unreasonable to suppose that Noah, standing upon the heights of Ararat, would have done the same. Yet even the full moon is not without its subtleties. The moon does not travel in a perfect circle, but in an ellipse, drawing near the earth at perigee and retreating from it at apogee. The gentle breathing of the heavens alters the length of the synodic months by nearly half a day, and when the moon is near perigee, it moves swiftly. The crescent thickens rapidly and the month shortens. And when it is near apogee, the moon lingers. Its crescent grows slowly and the month lengthens. This variation, though slight, is sufficient to shift the appearance of the crescent by 1 or even 2 days, while the full moon, being a geometric opposition rather than a visibility event, remains comparatively stable. Thus, the two methods, crescent and full moon, may diverge, as they do in the year of the flood. In one of the months we shall examine, the full moon rises a single minute after sunset, marking the 14th day with perfect precision, while the crescent, faint and delayed by the moon distance, would not have been visible until 2 evenings earlier. Such discrepancies are not errors. They are the natural consequence of the lunar anomaly. It is for this reason we must employ several charts in our reconstruction. The first provides the astronomical new moons and full moons, raw mechanics of the heavens. The second, drawn from the vantage point of Ararat, records the evening when the first visible crescent could have been seen, and the moments when the full moon rose at sunset, marking the 14th day. And the third chart traces the moon's apogees and perigees, revealing the hidden gear that governs the length of each month and the visibility of the crescent. Only by placing these charts side by side can we discern the pattern of the months in Noah's year. And only by discerning that pattern can we align the dates and spans preserved in Genesis with the sky itself. Let us therefore proceed with patience. Work is delicate, but the reward is great. For when the heavens are charted and the months set in their proper order, the chronology of the flood stands forth with a clarity that no human invention could contrive. The sky becomes its own witness, and the ancient record, long obscured by the mists of time, reveals its harmony with the very lights that God appointed for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Having now considered the uncertainties that attend the beginning of the month, and having traced the reasons why the crescent may falter while the full moon stands firm, we are at last prepared to turn our eyes to the heavens themselves. The work before us is not the cold labor of the mathematician, nor the sterile enumeration of astronomical tables, but the patient reconstruction of the sky once seen by living men. And we shall not ask the reader to calculate, nor to master the intricacies of celestial mechanics. We ask only that he accompany us as we place side by side the several witnesses that the heavens have preserved. Each chart is but a pane of glass, and when these panes are set together, the great window of Noah's year becomes clear. The first chart presents the astronomical new moon and full moons for the period in question, the bare mechanics of conjunction and opposition, uncolored by human sight. This chart uses a 0 year for BC dates. So the years are 1 year off from the historical dates. The time is universal time, not local time. And the second we have constructed from the vantage points of Ararat. So let's look at this first chart here. So this first chart, this is what we call the astronomical new moon and the astronomical full moon in universal time, which I believe is marked at Greenwich. So Greenwich Mean Time is related to universal time. And you can see in 2391, that would be, so they call it 2390 because they have a 0 year for these, is September 11th. So September 11th, that's when the astronomical new moon is, right? And so a person would have to compare each of these months with our second chart, and you will see that they differ. But the Jews never use the astronomical new moon, right? They never use that for determining the start of the year. Okay, so the second we have constructed from the vantage point of Ararat and the records and records the evenings when the first visible crescent might have been observed or been discerned, and the moments when the full moon rose at sunset, marking the start of the 14th day. And then the third chart traces the moon's approach and retreat, its perigees and apogees, revealing the hidden pulse that lengthens or shortens the month. And that explains the divergence between the crescent and the full moon. These three, taken together, form the scaffolding upon which the chronology of the flood must rest. Let us therefore proceed with care, not as those who dissect a mechanism, but as those who stand beside an ancient observer and watch the heavens turn with him. When the charts are read in harmony, the dates and spans preserved in Genesis align with precision that no artifice can contrive. The sky becomes its own commentary, and the year of the flood, long obscured by the mists of time, stands forth in the quiet authority of the lights that God has appointed for signs, for seasons, for days and years. So I kind of am being a bit redundant here because I wrote two different versions of that. And so you're reading two different versions, which I need to make marry together here. Okay, so what this chart is it has the new moon sighting and full moon observation from Ararat from 2391 to 2390 BC. And on the left column, I have the 600th year of Noah's life, although it's going to move to the 601st year when we get to month 1 again. The number of days of each month. So they're going to be 30, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 30, 29, 30, right? Then also I have here the day after observation. So this day after observation, when you would observe the new moon, this would be the first day of the week or the first day of the month. So according to observation, if you had used the visible crescent, September 12th would have been, so we said September 11th was the conjunction. And that's the month that I'm going to use, is that specific month. I'm going to have the diagrams where we can see that month. We can see what you would see in the sky. I just didn't put them in the book yet to figure out how to do that. So if we had used the visible crescent, September 12th would have been the first day of the first month. Now, we determined the first day of the first month was September 13th. That is, it's 1 day later. So it's a difference of +1. That is, the full moon day is September 26th. So if I had used this, then the full moon would not be at the right time. It would actually be late. So the full moon day gives us this date. And sunset would be at 6:23 p.m., so 18:23 hours. And the moon would rise 13 minutes after the sunset. So that's this date, right? So on the date of starting, so that's going to be on the evening of the 25th. On the evening of the 25th, you would see the sunset and then the moon rise. And so I'm going to have a picture of that, right? So you'll see how that would look in stellarium. But on each of these months, I have the sunset time and then the moonrise time. And so this date is going to begin on the evening of the 13th. So this would be the date of the 14th. So the 14th day of the month needs to be October 26th for the second month, right? And so again, I'm going to have more visual things for this, not just the charts themselves. And so you can see here, these 3 months in a row are all 1 day different. And then you have 5 months, the visible crescent would have produced the same thing as the full moon. And then you can see here, again, you have the full moon gives you a different start of the month. And this one's even 2 days off, right? So that first day of the first month, if we had used the visible crescent, we wouldn't have had a year that was long enough. It would be 1 day short, right? So it's kind of interesting that way. Plus also the weeks wouldn't have lined up. Okay, so charts, when first encountered, often appear as little more than a wilderness of numbers, mute, unyielding, and seemingly indifferent to the reader's patience. Yet, when approached with care, they become as windows through which the ancient sky may be seen once more. Let us therefore begin not with the whole year at once, but with a single month, the second month of Noah's 600th year. Okay, that's the one I'm going to look at. And allow its quiet testimony to instruct us in the method by which the remaining months must be read. The astronomical record places the conjunction, the true new moon, on the 10th day of October, 2391 BC. So if we go up here, so you can see the second month, 10th of October, October 10th. What did I do wrong here? Oh, this is the first day, October. Okay, I see what I'm doing here. October, I did something wrong. What did I write wrong? Okay, let me think here. So this is September, October 12th I have here. So I must have written something wrong. I must have been looking at the wrong thing. Okay, let me go back here. Okay. The astronomical record places the conjunction, the true new moon, on the 10th day of October 2391 BC. So that's not correct. There's the month. So that'd be October 12th, the 12th day. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's going to be on the 12th day. I put 10th. Okay, that's what I did wrong. So 12th. At conjunction, the moon stands between the earth and the sun, lost in the brilliance of the solar glare, and invisible to every eye. Indeed, it may have been hidden from view, not only on that day, but on the evening preceding it, for the moon's waning crescent becomes exceedingly faint as it approaches the sun. Under ordinary conditions, the first visible crescent would have appeared at sunset on the 11th. So I'm going to have pictures of all of this, right? Provided the western horizon was clear and the air sufficiently dry. In the pre-flood world, we cannot speak with certainty regarding atmospheric conditions, yet even if the crescent had been visible, we maintain, for reasons already given, that Noah did not employ the crescent as the marker of the month. The full moon, by contrast, requires no searching. It rises in the east at the very moment the sun sinks in the west, and its appearance is unmistakable. On the evening of the 26th of October, the sun would have set approximately 5 minutes before 6, and the full moon would have risen 17 minutes thereafter. So you can see here, now I say on the 26th of October, I'm going to have to see how I did this chart again, because I think that it would actually be on the evening of the 25th of October that we get this. But you can see the sunset 1752, so that's 552. And then 609, right? So I say here, 5 minutes before 6. So 1752, what did I do here? Okay, so it's going to be 8 minutes before 6. Okay, 8 minutes before 6, and the full moon would rise 17 minutes thereafter. So if you get 8 plus 9, that's going to be 17. Okay. Even had Noah not been watching it, the splendor of the rising orb would have declared the day. And this was no novelty to him. For 6 centuries, he had watched the full moon ascend at sunset more than 7,000 times. And the rhythm of its rising was as familiar to him as the beating of his own heart. This full moon day, marking the 14th of the month, aligns the entire week in a manner that is both elegant and necessary. Yeah, so on the evening of the 25th, I should put here, I'm pretty sure that that's right. Okay, anyway, I'll go back and check to make sure I did the chart that way. The full moon day, marking the 14th day of the month, aligns the entire week in a manner that is both elegant and necessary. When the full moon rises on the evening of the 14th, the 17th day of the month, the day on which the fountains of the great deep were broken up, falls upon the Sabbath. Thus the two periods of 7 days mentioned in the narrative stand in perfect harmony with the creation week, and the chronology of the flood rests upon the same divine rhythm that governed the first days of the world. More than this, the closing of the ark's door, that solemn moment when mercy ceased to plead with the antediluvian world, falls upon the 22nd of October. We shall see that when we examine the Exodus calendar, the second month of Noah's 600th year corresponds to the 7th month of the later Hebrew year, known as Tishri or Ethanim. Thus, the door of the ark closed upon the 10th day of the 7th month, the very day that would in later ages become the Day of Atonement, the day of affliction, of judgment, and of the solemn shutting of the door. This alignment is not asserted as proof, but it is presented as pattern, a pattern that appears not once, but repeatedly in the sacred record, and which the heavens themselves quietly affirm. The chart before us will make this evident, not by conjecture, but by the charts before us, but by the simple testimony of the sun, the moon, and the turning of the year. So here, this is the perigee and apogee chart that I mentioned. And I need to have an explanation of how this works. So this has to do where, before or after, how many hours before or after that you add to the average month. So, and it has the distance also that the moon is from the Earth, and then the time when perigee is and apogee occur. So when you have, for instance, just to kind of show you, so if you go back on this chart, you'll see we got these different dates. Now, so if we go here, for instance, just the beginning of the year, we're going to have at the new moon, it's going to be September 12th, right? So if I look here, September 12th, so that's about halfway through. So September 12th, that's when the moon's going to be in apogee, right? So, well, apogee, September 16th is apogee, so it's going to be closer to that. And so apogee is when it's farther away and it's slower. So that's going to make the month be longer, if that makes sense. It's going to be slowing at that point, right? So it changes the length of the month. So maybe I don't even need that chart. I might put it in the appendix instead. You'll see. Okay. So so I got this whole new section here. So that's where I want to finish off. Okay. So I just got this little bit to do. So when the dates of the flood year are gathered into a single view, the narrative of Genesis reveals itself not merely as a sequence of events, but as a structure, a year whose spans and intervals form a deliberate and harmonious design. The diagram before us is not a list of isolated moments. It is an architecture of time, a framework of days arranged with a precision that reflects the same mind that appointed the lights in the firmament for signs, for seasons, for days and years. So I need to put the diagram in there. So the diagram that I want to put in there is this one with the extra blocks. Okay, so there's the diagram. So we got the line diagram and the block diagram. That's the year of the flood. The year begins on the first day of September, or the first day of the first month of Noah's 600th year, Tuesday, the 13th of September, 2391 BC. So I need to actually put in here the dates on the calendar. I just have the biblical dates. Noah enters this year with the solemn knowledge that 120 years of divine forbearance have expired. For more than a century, he has preached, built, warned, and waited. Now the final preparations begin. The ark stands complete, but the work of gathering and ordering continues with the gravity of men who know that the last days of the old world are upon them. On the 14th day of the second month, the 15th of October, the animals begin, the fourth day of the second month, the animals begin to gather and enter the ark. Their arrival is itself a sign, a silent testimony that the hour appointed is come. For 7 days, this solemn procession continues until at last, the door of invitation is closed by the hand of God on the 10th day of the month. Whether this occurred at the beginning of the Sabbath or its close, inspiration does not tell us. We know only that the day corresponds, in the Julian reckoning, to the 22nd of October. Now, I take the position that the door of the ark is closed at the end of the Sabbath, so the end of the 22nd, which would align with what happened with October 22, 1844. The door closed when the day ended. But okay, this closing of mercy should fall upon a date which in the later Exodus calendar would become the Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the seventh month, is at least prescient. Noah did not and could not close the door. The divine hand sealed the entrance. In ages to come, this day would be remembered as the time when the door of mercy is symbolically shut and the work of the cleansing of the sanctuary begins. Here in the year of the flood, its meaning was enacted in the most literal sense. 7 days later, on the 17th day of the second month, the Sabbath, the 29th of October, the 40 days of rain began. They continue until the 26th day of the third month, Wednesday, the 7th of December. But the waters do not abate. They rise and prevail for 150 days, from the 27th day of the third month to the 29th day of the eighth month, from the 8th of December to the 6th of May, until every high hill under the whole heaven is covered. During the period when the waters prevail, and before the devastation caused by their recession, the ark is guided to the protective region of the mountains of Ararat. This occurs on the 17th day of the seventh month, Sunday, the 26th day of March, 2390 BC. 6 weeks later, the waters begin to diminish, and for another 150 days they abate, from the 13th day of the eighth month to the first day of the first month of the following year, from the 7th of May to the 3rd of October. On the first day of the 10th month, Tuesday, the 6th of June, the tops of the mountains appear. Right, so the tops of the mountains can't appear until the water begins to abate. That's the other problem with the 150 days ending with that date of the 17th day. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying there. It doesn't make sense the other way. The final sequence unfolds with the measured rhythm of sevens. 40 days after seeing the tops of the mountains, Noah sends forth a raven on the 11th day of the 11th month, Sunday, the 16th of July. 7 days later, on the 18th, Sunday, the 23rd, he sends forth a dove, which returns. And after another 7 days, on the 25th, the Sunday, the 30th, all these numbers, I gotta, yeah. So the 25th, which is the Sunday, the 30th, the dove is sent out again, but this time returns with an olive leaf. After yet another 7 days, on the third day of the 12th month, Sunday, the 6th of August. So I should put like the 30th of July instead of just the 30th, so you know which month. The dove is released, but never to return. At last, on the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, Tuesday, the 3rd of October, the waters are dried from off the earth. That's the end of 300 days. So the 300 days lie right at the right time with the biblical calendar. Yet Noah remains within the ark until the 27th day of the second month, Monday, the 27th of November, when the command of God releases him and he steps forth into a world washed clean. When these dates and spans are viewed together, the structure becomes unmistakable. The two great periods of 150 days balance one another like the arms of a scale. Two periods of 7 days at the beginning are echoed by 3 at the end. The 17th day of the second month aligns with the Sabbath. The 10th day of the second month aligns with the Day of Atonement. The first day of the first month marks the renewal of the earth. The entire year unfolds with the quiet authority of a divine calendar, its symmetry preserved in the heavens and its meanings preserved in the sacred record. This is the structure revealed in the diagram, not a random sequence, but a deliberate design, a year whose architecture bears the imprint of the same mind that governs the turning of the heavens. Now, what I was kind of thinking to do with this is, with these blocks, which I have here, is I could have this line diagram, and then as I go through the explanation, like have the picture of the blocks and just have them build up, like so that they can see each of these blocks being put in place. Would that be helpful? What do people think?
It could help some and provide kind of a reinforcement of what you're approaching with this.
Yeah, so instead of putting the blocks here with this, I'd show this diagram with the line diagram and then just show the blocks as I go through, right? So I can show the 40 days, I can show the week overlapping, and just so explain it and then show it visually is what I'm thinking I would do. But you can see here the precision of this whole thing of how it works out. So I don't have the Julian dates here, but you can see there's a period of 40 days, which this first week in which the animals come into the ark is part of that 40 days. That block sits on top of it. And then there's 6 days because the last day of this week is also the beginning of the day of rain. So they're in the ark there, and then Ellen White says on the 8th day, after the door was shut, that it begins to rain. So if you count from a Sabbath, it's going to begin raining on the Sabbath. And then you have 40 days with rain, and then you have the 150 days of the water prevailing. And you can see on the 17th day of the 7th month that it's during the time that the waters are still prevailing that the ark comes to rest at Ararat. And Ellen White says that it doesn't rest on the mountain. She's quite clear that it comes into the protection of the mountains of Ararat. Because when you have this period where all that water, as we talked about in last week, you're going to have all that destruction that happens during that, when the water abates. And so with the ark being in the protection of the mountains of Ararat, it's going to avoid all those destructive forces. It's like a harbor. I think actually that's the word she uses, if I'm not mistaken. And then it's going to be after the water begins abating that you're going to have on the first day of the 10th month that they first see the tops of the mountains. And then there's 40 days after that he releases the raven. And then a week later, he releases the dove. And then a week later, he releases the dove. Well, the first time he releases the dove, it just comes back. The second time he releases the dove, it returns with the olive branch. And then at the beginning of the 4th week, he's going to let go of the dove. And it's not going to return. It's going to have a place to rest. But that's what I got prepared for this week, which I think is quite a lot to take in. At the diagram there again without the other thing. I do have this chart here as well. So probably whether I want to just use this chart somewhere in there, I don't know. That was from my structured prophetic chronology. Any questions? So, and you had a question, why is that important? And you said, no worries, Kelly. What were you asking was important? The week you're talking about or something else?
Well, that was a little while ago, but
yeah.
You were laying out a lot of, I guess, particulars, and I just wanted to know why all those were important at the time. So, and as far as worries, no worries, meaning you were, excuse me, getting a little explanatory, and I said, no worries, don't worry about it.
I wasn't actually, I didn't even see your question.
The signal out here is not the best, but
but I do think that I have to be able to allow the reader to see it, right? So I'm going to need some visuals, and that's why the pictures of the sky would be helpful, so they can see the sun rising and the sun setting and the moon rising. In stellarium, it's the thing is I can't get it to move, but with like stellarium, I watch it, I can see the sun go down and the moon go above the horizon. You can actually watch. You got the sun on the right side in the west, and you got the moon rising in the east. And
the really most neat thing about that is I can point it at the ground and I can see where the sun is in relation to where I'm standing.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? Like you can point stellarium up at the sky with these apps, and you can see the whole galaxy no matter where you're standing.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And with that, I can put the horizon there. You can see the horizon. You can see where the sun goes down and the moon rises. Yeah. But I can show a picture of it. And then they can see that, but they can't see it move. Right.
Well,
with the program, they can. So I can give them a link to it. Yeah. But okay.
AI Jedi.
Yeah. So any final questions? Any final thoughts? Yeah, I'm worried that I'm too repetitive, but I probably will edit out some of the repetition when I finally get the whole thing written together. But because I write it at different times and end up repeating myself. Okay, well, let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful for the Sabbath and the fellowship that we can have, and we are thankful for each person who spends time watching these videos, and we look forward to the time when we can have a book in our hands and that we can spend time alone, thoughtfully and prayerfully. And also pray that this book can reach many, many hearts. And I just pray that I can have skill in writing it, and help me not to worry about the deficiencies in the book, because I know your Holy Spirit is also working. So we pray for one another. We ask, Lord, that you can continue to help us as we seek to know you, and that this Sabbath will truly be a blessing. We're thankful for the fellowship that we can have, even if it's at a distance. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.